Hi, everyone. Welcome to 3GNY Stories Live, WEDU Wednesday. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Gail Peck, 3GNY Vice President and a founding board member. I'm also the granddaughter of two Holocaust survivors, and I'm really happy to share that just last week I visited my grandma Rosalie, who is 102 years old and an incredible inspiration. Tonight is our 32nd WEDU Wednesday, our virtual series that brings our educational initiative, WEDU, from classrooms to your living rooms. We are so glad to have you here for this special WEDU Wednesday program, and we look forward to having you join us for more in the future. Just a quick note on these, they started in 2020 during COVID. We wanted to share our work more broadly with people while everyone was home. And thanks to all of you, the success of these helped propel 3GNY into a huge period of growth that's continuing. So for all of you who are returning, thank you so much and welcome to those just joining us. 3GNY is an educational nonprofit for grandchildren of survivors and supporters. As a living link, we preserve the legacies and lessons of the Holocaust. Our mission is to educate diverse communities about the perils of intolerance and to provide a supportive forum for descendants of survivors. We empower 3Gs to share their stories. For tonight's event, we'll be changing up the model a bit to feature two 3GNY speakers, siblings Lauren Engelman and David Berliner, who will together share the story of their grandmother, Lillian Berliner. I'm so glad Lauren reached out to me and Julie, who's also here tonight, about getting involved over a decade ago with 3GNY. The three of us met for coffee, and as they say, the rest is history. And Lillian spoke at a recent Shabbat dinner to the whole 3GNY community, over 100 people, and has attended many events. So we're really blessed to have been able to know her and hear her story. Tonight's program features this 3GNY's flagship program, WEDU, our educational initiative, short for We Educate. WEDU empowers grandchildren of survivors to compellingly share their families' Holocaust experiences in school classrooms and with community groups. Studies have shown that students who receive Holocaust education are more tolerant and comfortable with people of different backgrounds and races. They're more willing to challenge incorrect or biased information and are more likely to be upstanders. Through our grandparents' stories, we provide a human face to the past and a living link to the present, inspiring our listeners to stand up to hatred and to act with courage and compassion. 3GNY, and now as part of a national movement with Living Links, has trained more than 600 speakers in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and around the country, just like you'll see what Lauren and David do tonight. We've shared our stories in more than 1,500 classrooms and have impacted more than 80,000 students and community members. Just this past school year alone, we reached over 26,000 audience members with our personal family narratives from the Holocaust. In celebration of 3GNY's 18th or Chai anniversary, and in honor of our grandparents who inspire us, we've launched our Chai campaign to ensure 3GNY maximizes its impact today and is poised to continue doing so tomorrow. We're really at a pivotal moment right now. We've been out in full force in schools, educating young minds with our stories, but we need to do more. We all know we're witnessing anti-Semitism at record highs, and our work has assumed greater urgency now. Now more than ever, we need your help to meet the moment and ensure we're countering anti-Semitism with education as much as we possibly can. We also must continue to nurture, sustain, and grow our incredible 3GNY community. Thousands of grandchildren of survivors who found a home with 3GNY and understand the responsibility that comes with our family history. Please, if you can, make a gift to 3GNY's Chai campaign today. You can easily do so with the link in the chat and help us stand up to hate through our love for our grandparents. We promise them that we'll make sure their memory and stories continue to live on. Your support will help us keep that promise. Thank you so much for believing in our mission. It is now my honor to introduce Julie Cohen, one of my good friends and our fantastic volunteer speaker and a co-founding board member who's also involved with the New Jersey 3GNJ. And she's going to introduce Lauren and David and tonight's program. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Gail. It's a pleasure to be here. for this important program. So thank you everyone for joining remotely. Hi, I'm Julie Cohen. As Gail mentioned, I'm a co-founding board member of 3GNY. Nearly 20 years ago, celebrating our high anniversary, I am the granddaughter of two Holocaust survivors on my mother's side, and Holocaust remembrance, activism, education has always been very, very important to me. Proud to have been involved in 3GNY for many, many years. And now that I'm in New Jersey, we are starting a local chapter 3GNJ. So if anyone here is in the New Jersey area, we'd love to have you get involved and learn more. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce you to Lauren Engelman and David Berliner. Lauren Berliner Engelman is based in Chatham, New Jersey, with her husband and two children, and is a senior global client partner at Indeed. She has volunteered and participated with 3JNY for over a decade, including involvement with WEDU and producing the event series Jewishness, Activism, and Finding Belonging, the Post-Holocaust Diaspora, and Intersections with Marginalized Communities. David Berliner is based in Los Angeles, California, with his wife and puppy, and is a senior director of strategic partnerships and business development at Salesforce. He became involved with 3GNY and in WeDo through his sister Lauren, and recently joined the board of the International Jewish Sports Hall of Fame. While Lauren and David are sharing, feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A feature in the Zoom menu. We will have plenty of time for questions and discussion after their story. Lauren and David, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. So honored to be here. Feel so much love in the room. David, do you want to say hi as well?
Hey everyone, thanks for having us.
Oh man, well, thank you. This is such an amazing night. I feel a lot of love on this Zoom and in the room. We're going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. We look forward to hearing all your questions, getting to share about the extraordinary Lillian Berliner. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, Dave, do we see our screen?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. The goal of tonight is to share about our amazing Lillian. Um, and you may be wondering, why us? Why now? Why two of us? Um, well, long story short, last summer, our beautiful Lily passed away, July 2024, at the age of 97. And today is the first time that David and I are sharing her story for the first time since she's passed. So we've been going through the healing process, the grieving process, and leaning on each other for support for this momentous occasion. We're also excited to be the first two siblings to do a WEDU Wednesday. That's a big first as well. And we're very proud of 3Gs. We're very happy to be here with you tonight. David, anything else you want to add?
I just want to give a big thank you to the 3GNY community for welcoming Lauren and I. I want to thank Lauren for getting me involved with the organization and creating an opportunity for us to have this experience together, to have the opportunity to celebrate our grandma Lily's memory a little bit over a year after she passed. It's a very special opportunity for us, and it's important. Our initial work with her story started when she was still alive, and I think for Lauren and I both to have her as a reference and a validator and someone who could make sure that we had all of the facts and information, it was a very personal experience for both of us. And since her passing, I think we found each other a lot in this work, and so we're just really grateful for the opportunity, and thanks everyone for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's get started. We can't start this presentation without acknowledging the amazing woman that our grandma Lily was. As you can look in these beautiful family photos, you see someone who's warm and happy and smiling. She was loved by everybody. It kind of makes my eyes a little bit misty because she was a woman that lit up every room with her smile and her joy. And behind all of that is this extraordinary and scary Holocaust story, so much trauma. But here she is showing up to her grandchildren, her great grandchildren, her children, and was the most loving grandmother that we could ask for. David, I'd love to hear if you want to share a few words too.
Yeah, I mean these pictures, it's hard to do justice to Grandma Lily in a few pictures, but these definitely tell a lot of the story. Um, for me, and I think for Lauren too, she was so much more than just a grandma, right? She was a friend, she was a teacher. She's someone that we could both confide in, and I just remember sitting by her pool. I remember being in little diner booths, and we talked about her life growing up. We talked about her experience in concentration camps, and it always meant so much to me and to Lauren that she never dismissed our questions and she never held back any details. And from going through the WEDU training, I learned that that's not always the case, and her openness was really a gift to both of us. The story that you'll hear tonight means a lot to our family and a lot to Lauren and I. Um, and yeah, we're just incredibly grateful to be able to share it in her memory.
Yes, we hope tonight it's kind of a memorial to Lily, it's a love letter to Lily, and I think you'll all love learning her story. So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. Childhood. So Lillian Herskowitz, otherwise known to us as Lillian Berliner, was born in Kolozsvár, Hungary, or what's now known as Cluj-Napoca, Romania, on December 10th, 1926. As you can see from these photos from her memoir, which, by the way, we were lucky enough, and thank you, Mom, for helping her. She wrote a memoir. So we have Lily's experience in her own words and some photos that somehow survived the war that we see here. So we see a beautiful baby photo of Lily, Lily and her father Albert, a beautiful photo to the right with her mother Elizabeth and father Albert again. The last class picture before Nazi occupation and changes to the schooling in Kolozsvár, and also a statue in a beautiful park. Lillian had a beautiful, idyllic childhood. She went to Montessori school. She had a high school sweetheart. She did ice skating in the winter and went to the vineyards with family in Hungary in the summer. What else could you ask for? The Jews in Kolozsvár were very assimilated. They were a big part of the middle class, the burgeoning middle class that came to be in the 1900s and late 1800s. Albert was an entrepreneur and a shop owner, and Lillian lived a beautiful life. She learned to speak multiple languages, had lots of friends, and had a beautiful life here in Kolozsvár. I'm going to share a little bit about just some context of where Lily is from. I think it's important to the story because, as many of us on the call know, where you were located, where you were annexed, this all took a big piece in how things went for Jews during the Holocaust and even other marginalized communities in World War II as well. Right now, where Lily is from is in Romania. I really like this image on the other side of the slide that shows annexation. So after World War I, parts of Transylvania went to be a part of Romania. However, a lot of the Jews and a lot of the folks in Kolozsvár, they still spoke Hungarian, they still kept their language, tradition. They felt very proud to be Hungarian. Towards the end of the war in 1944, they were annexed back to Hungary. Initially, they were quite excited. However, it ended up being a beginning of the tragedy of the Transylvanian Jewry and also the Hungarian Jewry that happened around the same time. But let's also get back to the story. So Lily had a beautiful childhood with lots of friends and schooling. Everything kind of went upside down in March 1944 in the Nazi occupation. They were forced to wear stars of David on their clothing. They heard all these, they had heard prior to this, they had heard rumors of increased anti-Semitism. They had housed people that were going from Europe to Palestine. They even looked into getting visas to come to United States, but they really didn't think this could happen to them. And I think that really rings true for a lot of assimilated Jews in Europe at this time. They were suddenly second-class citizens. They could not go to school. They could not work. It became just truly hell. One fateful day in May 1944, they were rounded up and sent to the ghetto. Grandma Lily notes in her book that the cruel, cruel irony of this, May is the most beautiful, beautiful time in Hungary, yet it was a time of such turmoil and fear. and tragedy. They were told to pack one change of clothes and leave everything behind and go to the ghetto. The ghetto was an open-air barrack. There was no food, really poor living conditions. People were dying, especially the elderly, and it was just a really scary time. Um, my grandmother, on the way to the ghetto in the big truck that they were being taken to, she recalls something that really stuck out to me in her book. There was a woman that she knew from her town that had tried to get pregnant for years and years and years, and she finally had a beautiful baby. And the baby was crying, just wanting to be nursed by her mother. And she asked the officers, "Hey, can I nurse my child?" And they said no, but then all of the Jewish prisoners got around her and allowed her to nurse the baby so the baby could eat food. Um, so once they were in the ghetto, um, uh, Albert, uh, Albert, who's Lily's father, had a colleague of his who was able to sneak in food so they could not starve in the ghetto. David, I'm going to pass it off to you to add to the ghetto experience.
So, in addition to Grandma Lily's book, there are a few other places where she shared her experience and that we still have, in her own words, her experience. And so, I'm going to share a little bit throughout the presentation in her own words about these different aspects of her story. So, this is from a letter that she wrote to our dad, telling him about her experiences. The blows came in rapid succession until we were reduced to being frightened prisoners in our homes. We especially hated nights, dreading the additional punishments of the morning. The hardest pain to bear was the wall of indifference and hostility erected between us by our non-Jewish friends and neighbors. These were good people, people we grew up with and had known intimately all our lives. Some turned their heads upon seeing us, and some more painful expressions of sympathy, but none acknowledged us. It is always simpler to overlook injustice, even though we realize the evil of it, than become involved. To involve yourself takes time, energy, courage, and risk. I can still see our neighbors watching the gendarmes remove us from our homes. No one said a word. No one even called out when they saw us shoved with rifle butts. I'm sure some of them must have cared, but why didn't they speak up? The gendarmes escorted us to the railway station and herded us into sealed cattle wagons. Several days later, we arrived at Auschwitz.
Thank you, David. Um, so after 2 months in abysmal conditions in the ghetto, as David alluded to, they arrived at Auschwitz in June 1944. My grandmother recalls the boxcar trains being packed to the brim with people, stenching of slop buckets that people use for the bathroom. There's no water, no food. Many elderly people died on that journey to Auschwitz. They arrived and saw the words Arbeit macht frei as they arrived at what we know as the Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp. They were told they could walk 1 to 2 miles into camp, or if they could not walk, they would wait and there would be a ride, a truck to get them into the camp. My grandfather was badly beaten by a gendarme on the way to Auschwitz on the train, and he was around 50 years old, so it was really brutal for him. Lily and Elizabeth really tried to convince him to go, but he insisted he'll meet them inside the camp. That was the last time that Lily saw her father. What she found out later on was that Albert and other folks that were sent in the other line were sent to the gas chambers, where many Jewish prisoners and other groups were killed during in Auschwitz and other death camps. Um, that really hits me in the heart there to imagine what that must have felt like for her. That was the last time that Lily saw Albert going into Auschwitz. Um, Over time, the prisoners knew there were regular showers and gas chambers, and they were able to kind of differentiate which one was which and how to differentiate. A vivid memory that Lily has about her arrival to Auschwitz was seeing none other than Dr. Joseph Mengele, who is known as a co-conspirator, very evil co-conspirator of the final solution, and the doctor that operated on countless prisoners, twins, with his evil stick experiment. He would send elderly mothers and children and pregnant women to the left, and those who are more healthy to the right. And those who are in the line to the left were always sent to the gas chambers. My great grandmother Elizabeth was probably in her 40s, was becoming a little bit weak. She went right up to this evil man and showed him her hand. "Please, sir, I want to work." And that saved her life and kept her with Lily in Auschwitz. After that, their heads were shaved. They gave up their clothes. Grandma Lily recalls that she had this beautiful pair of ski boots, and she was hoping they would keep her warm for whatever would come. And she said there was an evil Jewish capo, who basically a Jewish officer in Auschwitz, and basically made her give away those boots and she terrifyingly grabbed mismatched shoes to put on, clothes that fell apart, just because the capo said, "I've been rotting in Auschwitz and you haven't, so I'm taking your shoes." And it was just the cruel reality of what was going on there. After that, they arrived at Birkenau Barrack B2, which was their home in Auschwitz. After my great-grandfather was killed, my great-grandmother Elizabeth began to regress mentally. Soon, Lily became more of the mother, and Elizabeth more like the child. They were starved, cold, and saw death all around them. They spent their days lining up, seeing who would get shot, as if they could escape the electric fences and the horror of Auschwitz. One way they coped was with creating what Lily called dream meals. They were starving, but they would dream of these beautiful meals and dinner parties that they would throw back in Cluj. They would talk about the linens, the tablecloth, the food, the coffee, the desserts, which is Grandma Lily's favorite. You'll find that she loved dessert. But they would dream of these beautiful meals, and for a minute they felt like life was normal, even in this horrific, miserable time where death and starvation and disease were all around them. It really helped them survive during that time. Lily and Elizabeth would line up day in and day out, hoping for a way out. My grandmother developed a big fear of German shepherds that were all around the camp, or being worried they would just be randomly shot. The only day my grandmother broke down in the camp, she says, was when she heard the camp orchestra play a beautiful song. It reminded her of her past life and how things have changed dramatically. But, my grandmother said something so inspiring. Somehow, she wrote, she never thought of dying. She always knew this nightmare would end. And, the amount of resilience that she had at such a young age to get through that time, it's really astounding. After a few months in Auschwitz, they were selected to go to the Bremen Labor Camp, which probably saved their lives. Anything was better to them than the hell of what Auschwitz was. They were ready to work hard, they were ready to be smart and try to find food and to stay alive. It was brutal work. They worked from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., often walking miles upon miles into the camp back to where they were staying. My grandmother had a few guardian angels during this time. She met a Belgian seaman who would leave food in the ruins, risking his own life because, if you were a local town person trying to feed the Jews, that could get you and your family killed or sent to the camp. One of my favorite stories that Lily shared is that she met French prisoners of war who were working there as well. They would get Red Cross packages with a bunch of delicacies like chocolate and writing papers, pens, cigarettes, anchovies, you name it. And Lily, because she spoke 7 languages, including French, she would kind of help translate and write these platonic or love letters from the Hungarian workers in Bremen to the French prisoners of war. And with that, she was able to get food and things that made life feel a little bit more normal for her and Elizabeth. Also, during this time, Elizabeth was growing very weak, and Lily used a lot of her strength and chutzpah to make sure that Elizabeth stayed safe and alive. Because at one point, Elizabeth could not do the work, and Lily threatened the officer, "Hey, I'll go to another place. I work hard. You're gonna lose me." And he didn't want to lose her work because she was a hard worker, and that kept Elizabeth safe during that time. It's so incredible to think of what a strong person she was at 16 years old, to be smart, to find food. It's really astounding. She's braver than a lot of people I know who are full-grown adults. As the war was coming to an end, the Germans were getting desperate and very sloppy. Bremen was being bombed by armed forces. On Yom Kippur 1944, Bremen was burned to the ground. To cover their tracks, they sent the Jews on what was called the Death March, and this was a practice happening all across Europe at this time. They were basically trying to get far away from the Allied forces who were trying to end World War II. So Elizabeth and Lily, they walked overnight in the cold with no shoes, insufficient clothing, in the middle of a very cold winter season. 2 out of the 3 women on these marches died on this walk. Either they were getting slow and they were shot, or they simply just fell into the snow. Then they arrived at Bergen Belsen, what they found out to be Bergen Belsen. My grandmother could barely talk about Bergen Belsen without crying. The first night she arrived, she laid down what she thought was a bale of hay, and she realized she'd fallen asleep on what was a pile of dead bodies. Haunting. David, I'd love to pass it to you to share an excerpt from Lily's book on Bergen Belsen.
As the Allies were getting closer, we were marched to Bergen Belsen in February 1945. Not being adequately clothed or shod, we were half-dazedly wobbled through Germany's highways, town, and villages. Thousands must have seen this raggedy column of frozen and starved women, but no one said anything. I guess no one wanted to get involved. What awaited us in Bergen Belsen cannot be described. Bodies strewn all over, constant random shooting from the watchtowers, stench, hunger, thirst, typhus. That's the way the British found us on April 15th. And in her book, she said, when I look at pictures from Bergen Belsen at a museum, I cannot hold my tears. We were in Bergen Belsen for 4 months, but it cannot be said that we lived while there.
Wow, that line always gets me. It's so powerful. What an amazing testimony. As Lily mentioned, Bergen Belsen was hell on earth. You could not get away from death and typhus anywhere. By the end of the war, Elizabeth especially was very ill with typhus, probably around 60 pounds towards the end of the war. Typhus, for those who don't know, is a lice disease that many concentration camp prisoners got from that was all over the clothes that they were given at the camp. So this was very widespread at Bergen Belsen. People were dying constantly, covered in disease and lice. In April 1945, the British Allied forces came and freed the camp. They announced in Yiddish they were free, but the prisoners could not believe it. They could not believe it was real. It was truly a miracle for Lily and Elizabeth to be free. Lily said that the soldiers openly wept when they saw the conditions at the camp. They could not believe what was happening this whole time. Many of these British soldiers were Jewish as well, and it was so painful for them to see the destruction that happened to the Jewish community in Europe during this genocide. Sadly, many of the Jewish prisoners were deeply malnourished or had typhus, so many of the freed prisoners were not able to fully enjoy this newfound freedom at the end of the war. As David and I mentioned, Lily is highly intelligent, resilient, and used her knowledge of languages throughout the war to help her. At Liberation, Lily became a translator in Bergen Belsen. She helped the British Allied soldiers connect and interact with all the prisoners who spoke a variety of European languages. And that helped her find opportunity, food, and especially medical care for Elizabeth, her mother, who deeply needed medical care because of typhus and was deeply malnourished and needed to be, I think Grandma Lily mentioned that she was healed by a famed doctor, Dr. Giselle Pearl, and he would feed little droplets of food to just get food into Elizabeth and nourish her. She worked with the British Allied soldiers, and she also worked with many of the doctors that were in the camp at Bergen Belsen, including one very special doctor named a Belgian doctor named Marcel Bowen. Marcel built a close relationship with Lily and helped Lily and Elizabeth get back on her feet after the war, and we've maintained a close relationship with them. I actually think that his son, Marcel's son Tom, may be on the call tonight, so thank you for joining. Lily got to meet this family in New York City much later, and my parents got to visit with them in Belgium just this summer. David, I'm going to pass it to you to share another interesting thing that Lily got to do after the war.
Thank you. Yeah, to Lauren's point, being a translator is one of the unique themes in Grandma Lily's story, and it's something that um, helped her when she was in need of medical care and treatment. But it also created some interesting and unique opportunities after the war. Something that always stood out to me about her story is that within a year, 2 years of being liberated from Bergen Belsen, she was brought in as a translator into Nazi prison guards um, to pull confessions about their role in the concentration camps. And she talks about it in her book, so I'm going to read again in her words. I was placed in prison on occasion to share a cell with a former guard who would not admit to having been a guard. A few times I was in a cell with Hungarian guards, and I was placed there as one of them. Sometimes I was able to get them to admit to having worked as guards, but some of them never confessed. Their cells were bugged, and I later translated them for the Public Safety Office to produce them during the trials. The British captured and brought many of the guards to trial, including the camp commandant, Joseph Kramer. He was sentenced to death by hanging at the Lüneburg trial.
Thank you, David. So cool. I mean, and again, Lily was so young, and I think it was really empowering for her doing that work, interrogating Nazis just to get a sense of justice and seeing justice served after all these atrocities. So that was very empowering for her as she was rebuilding her life and sense of self after the war. After liberation, one of the first military governments was set up in Ulm in Germany, where Lily and Elizabeth stayed for a little while. However, that was technically the British zone, and Lily and Elizabeth wanted to go to America, so which brought them to Frankfurt. Um, so one funny story about Lily's mother, Elizabeth, is that she was technically what was called an underground marketeer. And she would, she would find herself wanting to trade goods illegally to try to, get subsistence, make money, get different goods that she could trade for other things. And one day, Officer Walter Berliner came by and was interviewing her because Lily and Elizabeth had started the visa process to come to the United States. And Walter was like, oh, I've heard of some people being a marketeer. That wouldn't be you, right? And Elizabeth said, no, no. And he looked under the bed and sees like all of these things. And he's like, okay, like just kind of ignored it. And it's just a funny story about my great grandmother, Elizabeth, how she kind of made do and survived after surviving. A little bit more about Walter Berliner. This became a really important person in all of our lives, and he has an incredible story on his own. Walter is from Vienna, Austria. His father was a very well-known doctor, Dr. Max Berliner in Vienna, who treated the King of Yugoslavia, the Queen of Romania. They were able to escape in 1939, and Walter joined the counterintelligence forces and then found his way back in Germany when the war was over. One day, Walter asked Lily to dance at an event at what was called the Jewish Welfare Board, where Lily was working in the American zone, and the rest was history. They were the first Jewish wedding in Frankfurt after the war. This is a beautiful wedding photo of them right here, looking so happy. Although Lily said in her book she was extremely nervous to get married and, to build a relationship with a man and be without her mother technically. And in Walter fashion, he expedited them getting to America. So Lily was to go to America as a war bride, but she was hesitant to do it first because she didn't want to leave her mother. But they were ready to go to New York and start a new life here. What comes next is the miracle of a Holocaust survivor in America or wherever survivors settled in Europe, in Israel. They begin to start their lives. They get married, have children, have grandchildren. These are photos from my grandmother's book from David's and my bar bat mitzvahs. These are my beautiful parents, Merrill and Steve. Steve is Lily's son. This is Lily's other son, Andy. This is our wonderful Aunt Amy, who became like another daughter to my grandma Lily, who's here happy as ever at my bat mitzvah. David and I, she was a big part of our Hebrew school journey. She taught us about the Holocaust along the way. David and I got to be with her at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., where we got to learn about the Holocaust really for the first time in elementary school. And Lily was there to teach us that story. This slide makes me really happy because Lily lived large in every sense of the word. She still spoke about the Holocaust openly and shared the trauma and shared those hard times, but also lived so big in a good time. Um, and I'll let David speak about his wedding experience. You see a beautiful picture of David and his wife Olivia at their wedding reception. In the middle here are my children, Eliza and Daniel. Eliza is named after Lily's mother, Elizabeth. And when Lily met Eliza, she said that was the happiest she's ever been in her life. And now she knows why she's lived so long to meet this beautiful girl and pass on this memory of Elizabeth. Um, this is her meeting my son in spring 2021, a few months into the COVID. I had a COVID baby, a winter COVID baby, and Grandma Lily just loved this chunky baby boy, and it just made her so happy. And this is a picture from my bridal shower, where she was a big part of my wedding. And David, I'd love for you to share one of your memories or some of your thoughts too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the photo on the left is from a wedding ceremony with my wife Olivia, like Lauren said. Olivia and I had been dating for 10 years at this point, so Grandma Lily was very, very patient with me, which I appreciated. But whenever I would go visit her before we got engaged, she would always ask me, like, do you think you'll get engaged? And then after we got engaged, like, do you think you'll get married? And so we had we had a very playful back and forth, and to be able to have her as part of that day and that experience, and to have these pictures and those memories, the fact that she was able to give a speech at our wedding and be part of it, the fact that we can remember her whenever we look at Eliza and talk about Eliza now, it just means so much to us. So we were very lucky to have had her with us for as long as we did.
Definitely. And it's been so amazing as 3G to have a surviving grandparent be with us for most of our adult lives and be a part of all of these beautiful milestones and these Jewish traditions and holidays. You know, her home smelled of matzo ball soup and brisket and love on holidays. And one of my favorite things to do in her 90s, my mom and I had decided that we're gonna throw like these big birthday parties for her. So we would like decorate the apartment. We got her like big cake. We got her like a sash and a crown. And especially after COVID, going through that time where we couldn't all be together, we decided we were going to go big for her birthday and get her the biggest chocolate cake and just like love on her. And my grandmother got to build a close relationship with my husband, Tom, and both my kids. And these are memories that I'll cherish forever. To conclude, I want to pass things off to David to wrap us up today.
Thank you, and such an incredible, beautiful job, Lauren. Thank you for taking us through the story. Before we get to the Q&A, Lauren and I wanted to wrap up with one final excerpt from the letter that I've been reading from, which was a letter that Grandma Lily wrote to our dad, Steve, um, sharing her experiences amidst the backdrop of the Vietnam War. Um, we thought it was a powerful message about staying engaged in the responsibility of future generations to never forget what came before them and to try and learn from it. And even though this letter was written in the early 70s, it feels as present and relevant as ever, given what's happening here in New York and in our country and all over the world. So we'll finish with Grandma Lily's words. The question is, do people really care? Even if they care, their involvement is not deep enough. They also forget very swiftly. Newer atrocities, acts of terror, and murder instantly take the place of previous ones. These days, no assassin or criminal can hold the spotlight for very long before another supplants him. All senseless killing becomes a personal disgrace, a deep disgrace. Unless individuals all over the world come to realize and feel this disgrace, it may be very long before we can hope to glimpse, even in dreams, the bright light of justice. My generation did not prove itself capable of becoming involved enough to prevent injustice, crime, or senseless killings. My wish to you is the hope that your generation may become aware and deeply involved. I hope your generation will realize the terrifying mistakes of the past, and what is even more important, will learn from it.
Wow, so powerful, David. Thank you for sharing those beautiful words. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Julie and Gail, and we can start Q&A, and I will stop screen sharing.
Thank you so much, Lauren and David, for gifting us with your family story. Like I've been fortunate enough to meet your grandmother, so it was extra meaningful to me to hear it come from you too. So we're now going to open it up for questions. As a reminder, if you have a question for Lauren or David, you can put it into the Q&A, and we'll do our best to address it. If we don't get to your question, you can email events@3gnewyork.org, and we'll make sure that we get back to you later on. So we do have a lot of questions. I'm going to start, you kind of left off with her own words. So, I know she has been involved and she knows about 3GNY. What did she think of, this is for Lauren and David, or whoever wants to take it. What did she think of your involvement with 3GNY? I'm sure she had much to say about it.
Yes, I'm happy to take this one. Lily was over the moon that we were involved with 3GNY. I think when I first told her about it, she was blown away this even existed. And she was so proud of the grandchildren who are so passionate about doing what we do, sharing our grandparents' Holocaust stories to make this organization a reality. So shout out to Gail and Julie, who are two of the founding board members. So she was blown away just with the creation of the organization, and she was so proud that David and I were so interested to learn the story, want to share it in schools, want to share it in events. I got to share her story at Indeed in a podcast episode with our CEO, which was a big success. And she was just really empowered because for a while, like a lot of survivors, their stories were untold and not passed down. So the fact that 3Gs are so passionate about bringing these stories to life and passing them down to 4Gs, she was so impressed. She also loved going, she got to go to a few 3GNY events in person and get to meet some of you, and she just loved the community as well.
That's great. Thank you, Lauren. Not a dry eye in my house here, and I'm sure our guests tonight agree. I was wondering, how does Lily's story inform who you are today, you and David?
Want to start, Laura?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last year has been a challenging one for our family. Uh, I think throughout the story, you can get a sense for obviously the seriousness that we take her story and the importance to us of keeping her memory alive. But she was also just a constant, friend and presence in our lives. And we have a small and mighty family, is what we say. But she was really the head of it and kind of the light for it. And um, when she was here, and this was true for when I was in middle school and high school and college, when I was working, if I was ever at a crossroads, if I was stuck on a decision, if I couldn't figure something out, if I was scared, I would just call her just to hear her voice and just to hear, say hi, David, and it would calm me down. It would kind of refocus me. It would show me the right way, and I would just ask, what would Grandma Lily do? And so that was kind of a go-to for me, and it still is. And it feels, even talking through her story tonight, that she's, as present and alive as ever with us. Um, and it's harder, I think, to tell the story now because Lauren and I both, I think, felt the same way, that we really wanted to make sure we were accurate to the facts. And I think that's just one of the challenges with being a 3G and doing things like we do. You really want to factually um, have a record of these important stories. Um, but it's also important just to remember the spirit of these people. And so I think that's what we were trying to do. And so, it was really nice to reconnect with the story this way. So, Lauren, I don't know if you have things you want to add to that.
Yes, and I definitely concur with what you said, David. One thing that Lily taught me was to just be positive and to be resilient and push through and to always look for the bright side. And that's something that has really driven me. Like, I try to be a very optimistic, positive person who has bad days and sad days, like Lily. But that's really one of the things that she really inspired me to do. And she really has inspired me just to know this Holocaust story and really engage with my Jewishness, keeping traditions alive, I learned how to make challah and bring challah and matzo ball soup and wanting to pass down those traditions and these beautiful memories that I have with Lily. And I just want to shout out here, my mom had commented to us that I wanted one piece of the story. I was trying to keep on time, but when Lily was in Frankfurt, she also started medical school and had almost completed it. But she didn't finish it before she came to the United States. However, she did finish college, which she passed the entrance exam and then got her master's of public health, and then also had a very long career in nursing home administration, retiring in her late 80s. So I just wanted to shout out that she had an amazing career in the medical field as well.
Okay, the next question, just kind of along those lines. This is from Patricia Sarnowski. She says, "Thank you, Lauren and David, for sharing some of Lily's remarkable life. I have no doubt she's beaming with pride tonight. Do you know where and how Lily learned the languages? I know you said she spoke all those languages. I don't know if you know any of those details. She clearly not only had, this is more from Patricia, she clearly not only had a strong spirit, but a brilliant mind, as evidenced by her words that David shared." So,
Yeah, that's a great question. I think she just happened to, I think she learned in school, but also I'm assuming she probably had some tutoring or some language tutoring. She was the only child with upper middle class parents who wanted her to know all these languages. So I think it was a combination of school and some education inside the home as well.
Yeah, I remember being really young and asking like the world's simplest question of just like how is it possible? Like how can you do that? And she kind of shrugged it off that it wasn't that out of the ordinary at the time for families like theirs to really prioritize the arts and prioritize things like learning languages. And it served her really well. But I just have these flash memories. I'm sure Lauren does too. We would be in her apartment and we'd be talking to her, and then the phone would ring, and all of a sudden she'd drop into French or Hungarian or Yiddish. And I mean, every time it happened, it would blow my mind. And just kind of seeing that brilliance in action, it was very subtle, but just her ability to kind of switch between these things was always something that kind of blew me away.
Yes, and funny enough, she wasn't a Yiddish speaker, kind of that wasn't one of the languages she had learned, but she picked it up in New York after the fact and just kind of like she understood German, so she kind of picked up the Yiddish, parts of it and would use that in her vernacular every day. But I think she was actually, when she was teased a little bit when she first came to the US with our Poppy Walter, that she wasn't a Yiddish speaker because a lot of the Jews from Poland or Russia or some of the other Eastern European countries spoke Yiddish. But she surely picked up some of the booby words.
Great. Another question from the audience from Alex Core. "Dear Lauren and David, as a tennis friend of your dad, Steve, who joined him in Israel for the Maccabiah Games, and as the son of two Holocaust survivors, Eva, a Mengele twin, and Mickey, who survived 4 years in camps, I commend you and the others with 3GNY on what you're doing. As someone who lectures as well, I have two questions. One, how can we, as 2Gs and 3Gs, etc., encourage other 2Gs and 3Gs to speak about their legacy because it's so important?" And I'll read the second one after you guys answer the first.
Okay. You want to start, Lauren, or you want me to?
Sure, I'm happy to. Um, I think one of the nice ways to engage people is kind of like no pressure, and allow maybe, I know through Gen Y, we have a lot of educational events like tonight and virtual events, but also more social events with the community, like Hanukkah parties. We just had the beautiful summer soiree last week. There are lots of ways to kind of meet other 2Gs and 3Gs without the pressure of needing to share. So I think not every 3G is like David and I, where we had a grandparent who was really open to sharing. In other families, it's a lot more traumatic, and the generational trauma is really strong and are not as open. So I think we need to meet people where they are. And I think sometimes with social events, you can kind of, I know at the soiree last week, I was chatting with the new program manager, Haley, who's on the line as well. Then she mentioned she had a grandparent who survived from Vienna, and that just opened up a whole conversation. So I think like that, just kind of gradually opening up and giving people opportunities to share. David?
Yeah, just to add, I mean, I think my experience with 3GNY has been kind of an interesting road, having done the training, but because of COVID and just other personal reasons, never having shared alone in a classroom before. So this is a big step for me, and one that Lauren's been so encouraging in, and so I really, really appreciate that. But I think the challenge with these stories is that they mean different things to different people, and not all 2Gs and 3Gs um, may feel the desire or the comfort to share at a certain time. And I think organizations like 3GNY that are um, available and open to different levels of participation and kind of allow people to meet the organization where they are super, super important. But even just for me, the individual parts of the story that feel very personal are kind of one aspect, but there are broader themes and kind of wider aspects of these stories that feel just as relevant and important to talk about today, as they've been, over the last um, 5, 6+ decades. And so I would just say, if there are people that are considering telling their family story or thinking about ways to connect with people around it, um, looking for the universal themes, because they're there, and focusing on the people, taking a little bit of pressure off the dates and facts. Um, for me, at least, that was a big step back into the organization.
Great. I think you answered really the second part of the question as well. So I'll hand it off to Gail to ask the next one.
Sure. This question is from Deborah. Are you two going into schools together to tell Lily's story? And have you already gone into a classroom? And if so, what are some of your takeaways and memorable moments from speaking with students?
I'm happy to jump in on this one. We have not gone into schools together, but maybe tonight could be a start of us sharing the story together, doing more things with 3GNY. And David's typically based in Los Angeles, where Living Links and the USC Shoah Foundation is located. So maybe there's something cool that we can do together there. But I had the opportunity to go into a bunch of schools in the New York City area before COVID. Since then, mostly virtual. But I always had a great experience, even in places like deep in Brooklyn or the Bronx. The students were always eager to learn. Many were shocked about some of the details I shared, although I try not to get too gory in those situations. Like you can share the darkness, but not go in a place that's going to scare these kids from asking questions. Um, Something that really resonated with the kids is that Lily was 16 when she was sent to the ghettos. She was young, she was a student just like them, and that really resonated. They couldn't believe that someone their age had gone through something like that. Um, and what I thought was so interesting about some of these schools, many of these schools were marginalized communities, people that looked different than us, but they were always great allies, really open to learning. And I thought that was cool too, because I was kind of worried, would these students care? I hope they would, but they cared and they were really happy to hear the story.
That's great. Another a question. What do you think Lily would say about the rise in anti-Semitism happening so boldly today?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So I think there are two aspects of this question for Grandma Lily's and the conversations that we had. I think on the one hand, um, she was full of a lot of joy and forgiveness, but I think she was also fiercely loyal. And when we talked about even different iterations of anti-Semitism or things that have happened beyond her own experience. I think she approaches situations with a lot of empathy, and she used her intelligence to really try and understand where the anti-Semitism was coming from. I think she had a very complicated relationship with Hungary, where she was from. I think that they were probably a group of people in a country that she never could forgive and could never quite get past um, what they did to the Jewish population in that country and the continued anti-Semitism even to today. But more broadly, I think um, there was sadness. I think there was um, you know disappointment that we couldn't learn from the things that have happened before us. I think you can see that even in the letter that she wrote to our dad, even though that was in the 70s. Um, but I think she also looks at organizations like this, and it would give her hope. And she would look at communities like the 3G community, and I think it would make her feel, that she knew that there were people that would fight to make sure that stories like hers wouldn't be lost, and would stay relevant, and would inspire hopefully the next generation to try and do better. And so, I don't know, for me at least, it was never only one thing. I think she was the type of person who engaged in those complex topics pretty deeply. But Lauren, I don't know anything you want to add to that.
Wow, David, you said it so well. Thank you. But one thing I did want to add is that in response to anti-Semitism, I think our community and something Grandma Lily always exemplified was the concept of tikkun olam, which is heal the world. And that can mean a lot of things. It can mean social justice. It can mean caring for your neighbor, caring for your community. And I think Holocaust survivors and people like Lily, they just going through what they've gone through and then being able to pass down love instead of hate, to share love and warmth instead of fear, even with anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hate. That was all around them even after World War II. It actually got worse. And even now with rising anti-Semitism in places like the US, her response was always to give love, to celebrate holidays harder, to wear your Jewish pride proud. And that's what Lily would tell us to do, is to not hide, to love who you are, to be proud of who you are. And I think that's what Lily would want everyone in the audience to do too.
Yeah, and she could inspire hope just by being herself, and I think that's a big part of her legacy.
Wow, I think that's a really great way to wrap up her story. Lauren and David, thank you so much for speaking tonight and for sharing Lily's story. We're grateful to have both of you involved with 3GNY. And Julie, thank you so much for being a part of this program. It's been great to be on this journey with you since many, many years ago. Thanks to all of you out there for joining us. We're glad you took the time to hear Lauren and David speak words that we all know must never be forgotten. If you haven't yet made a gift to support our programs, we hope you'll consider making one now. You can refer to the chat for ways to donate, and thank you so much. We'd also love your feedback about tonight's event. So you're going to receive an email, and also it's in the chat for a quick survey to help us learn from tonight's program to better serve our community. If you have any connections with educators who might want our speakers, just like Lauren and David or them, to present to their classes, please let us know. We have a large speakers bureau of hundreds of grandchildren that are prepared and ready to present, just like you saw so beautifully done tonight. So like I said, we're going to send an email out with more information as well as a recording of tonight's program. And you can also check out past WEDU Wednesdays. There's over 30 more of them on 3GNY's YouTube channel. So thanks again, everyone, for taking the time out of your evening to be here. And we're really grateful tonight and as always for your presence and support. Have a great night.